Does the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints hate men? Every year, I watch during Mother's Day and Father's Day to see the disparate responses in how they treat Mother's Day versus Father's Day. And this year was no different, and just as, actually, this is probably the most disappointed I've ever been. At a time when marriage is in decline and fatherhood is in decline and more children are fatherless and without direction than ever before, it seems strange that a church that seems so dedicated to and revolving around families would omit one half of the parental contract in its observations of those holidays. So to look at that, we're going to look at the disparate responses. So this is the church's post honoring women and the influence of motherhood on 9 May, which is, of course, before Mother's Day happened. And then we're just going to scroll down here a little bit. And you see posted tributes from other social media sites, official recognition of Mother's Day, posts from leaders of the church. There's another one honoring their mothers and the families. That's 4 apostles, 5 apostles out of 12. I don't know who that one's from. And this one here about divorce and how great she's a mother. And this was actually posted on the 8th. I'm not going to click into it because I can't remember what it's going to do because I don't subscribe to any of these social media channels. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of them, tons of them, about mothers and motherhood. Okay, so this is the official church news. All right, now that we've restored the tab, so here's the official news page here, and you can see in the feed here that there's this post here, news release about honoring women and the influence of motherhood. So now we're going to look at the church's website today on 22 June 2026, the day after Father's Day. And there's some nice stories here about America's 250th birthday and the Constitution and hymns and seminars and etc. But if you look at this, there's nothing here. And you can see the dates here. 20th of June, 17th of June. There's nothing here about Father's Day. Okay, so I can click on this and show you. The last news release from the church was the day before Father's Day. So there is nothing on the church's website about Father's Day. And I have to wonder, does the church hate men? Does the church hate fathers? Is the church doing this to slake the demands of women who are upset about men getting so-called preferential treatment? And are there some terrible men out there? Absolutely. In fact, prisons are full of mostly terrible men. There's some terrible women incarcerated as well. But most of your terrible offenders to the law are men, but not most men are not in prison. And I have to give the women in my congregation credit for putting on a soiree. And they made a bunch of breakfast casseroles and cut some fruit and stuff and had something. But there was no official leadership comment. On Mother's Day, the bishop went in and said some words to the mothers. The bishop was not even there this week, and his second in command didn't come in to either get any food or say anything. So there was no official recognition of fathers and Father's Day. In fact, there were no talks from the pulpit about Father's Day at all. And one of the hymns we sang, of course, had to talk about mothers, because we can't have Father's Day without talking about mothers, apparently. But we can have Mother's Day without talking about fathers. And I have to give the women who did this credit, because the women's group leader is in an unhappy marriage. One of her counselors is divorced a long time ago and never remarried. And the secretary, I think, is a widow. I think she's the secretary or one of the other counselors. So it's a group of women who don't exactly have the best experiences with men. So I appreciate them doing that. But I'm really shocked that the church would have nothing to say at all about men and fatherhood on Father's Day. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is their website. We'll even refresh it just to prove it to you. Okay, I just refreshed it. Nothing. There's stuff about the Constitution, which I love. Great. I'm glad we're good citizens, mission leaders, missionary work, and nothing about fathers. Absolutely nothing. So I have to ask you this question. If you expect men to marry and have children, maybe you should have something nice to say to them. Because otherwise, you should not be surprised at all if more men bow out of marriage and families. Because I had an awesome dad, and I'll bet you did too. But all we heard about was how great your moms were, how great your wives were. And notice none of these men's wives posted anything about how great their husbands are. I mean, there's pictures here, but the husbands posted this. You know, the men who normally don't do anything right and couldn't pour piss out of a boot with instructions written on the heel without a woman there to tell them how to do it. But none of these women posted anything about how grateful they were for their husband. His wife is dead, but so that he gets a pass. But none of and the missionaries weren't solicited to make posts about their fathers for Father's Day. I don't get it. What is the message you're trying to send? Because it's a clear message that we don't like men and we don't like dads. And if this is the message you wanted to send, let it echo. And if not, now's your invitation to correct it. Because in the absence of, there's no evidence that says that you appreciate, let alone support fathers and men. At least not when you make a special effort to talk about the influence of motherhood, and there's no mention whatsoever about fatherhood, as if God the Father isn't a man. I don't know. Even Jesus called him his father, but there's not even any mention of that, about God the Father. There was at church, but there isn't even on the church's website. And I have to wonder, who's running this? Because it certainly doesn't seem to be this guy. Because this is a huge oversight. Huge oversight. And I'd like to see something done about it. Because it's not making me happy. And I realize that all churches are run by people. And people have weaknesses. And people make mistakes. That's why I believe that you can't correct a problem if you don't know it exists. So this is me letting you know that I have a problem. Because there's lots of other people who won't say anything. They're just going to stop coming. And the whole church will suffer because of it. So, anyway, ball's in your court. Good luck. Godspeed. You're going to need it.